Hey guys, this is Josh Stahlheim, pilot handle Skybound from the MultiGP Sport Class Championships from last week. I wanted to make this video, I guess, just based on my experience from, or maybe my 6 takeaways from the championships last weekend. And it kind of took me longer to make this video than I would have wanted to. Just because I really wasn't all that happy with my performance, or, I was kind of feeling a little bit bummed out just based on how things played out. But, we kind of pout for a little while and then move on. But I wanted to share this video, or kind of my takeaways for anybody who's currently racing, or, well, maybe currently racing, but maybe not currently racing in that top pro class tier, because I don't think that any of this advice would be too valuable to those that are kind of already in that pro class. But maybe these takeaways or these tips or this advice would be most helpful to those that are kind of just getting into racing, or maybe wanting to start to get into racing. So I think that's probably who this might be most helpful to, is those just starting off racing, or those that are thinking that they might want to get into racing in the future. And then also as for me, I mean, this is kind of a reflection video based on my experience from last weekend. But I guess before we get to the list, I want to say that I had a lot of fun. That is one of the few races I've been to, period. Not only have I been to, I just haven't been to that many races at all. But especially one that big, or on that big of a scale, one that's, I guess streamed or has a national or even a worldwide audience. But it was a lot of fun. It was kind of challenging. It was kind of intimidating. Met a lot of great people out there. There's a lot of great competitors, and I want to just congratulate anybody who came out there. When I first qualified, I think I ran the track the first time I was out of Lake Murray. It was with Mid Carolina FPV, some of the quad rivals and Happy Quad members out there as well, Southeast FPV. We just kind of got together on Lake Murray and ran a qualifier track. That was the first time I had run the real life track, and that actually ended up being my lap time that got me to the sport class championships last weekend. I ended up only ran one other qualifier a little while later, but I didn't improve my time. But everybody who raced, who qualified, who made it out there last weekend, a lot of great pilots, a lot of great flyers, and I think that's a really great accomplishment. So certainly something to be proud of. And I originally, when I got my invitation to the sport class, or I kind of had my first qualifier and just put it out the back of my mind. I didn't have any, I guess, real visions of kind of going to the championships or anything like that. But then I got my invitation from Scully, and said I was invited to the sport class championship. And I said, okay, well, this, as a, getting older, I guess mid-30s or whatever, I said, maybe this is the only chance I might have to do this, or I don't know, things, who knows if I'll ever get a chance to go back. And so I said, I'll go ahead and go buy my ticket and just be there. The intentions were that I wasn't going to win. I mean, that wasn't my mindset, or that wasn't even something I considered. And I just wanted to go for the experience, just to say, when it's all said and done, that I had been to a championship, or that I went to the race, I had participated and got to, meet the people, feel the experience, or just be there, So I got down there, and first day was Thursday. So Thursday was practice. I actually thought that was the qualifying day. I thought Thursday was qualifying and then Friday was racing, but no, Thursday was just practice. But I started out thinking it was qualifying, and I hadn't had time to sim the track, and I was feeling just kind of in a bad mood, or kind of in a funk, because I wasn't really getting any good laps in. Nerves were kind of taking over, and I don't know, it just wasn't going how I wanted to. And then somebody told me in one of the lines, hey, this is just practice, and I said, oh, okay. I thought today was qualifying, but he said, no, just practice today. And I said, okay. And after that, just started flying immediately better. And I got, just got some good packs in on the track, just taking it easy, just trying to learn the feel of it. And then when Friday came, we went out for qualifying. We had 6 packs on one of the tracks, and then we went to the next track and we had 4. Just took it easy, took it slow, put a few packs in, and just got a little more comfortable with the track and just feeling good. And about 3 or 4 packs in, I think I finally got on the board, right? Like I finally strung 3 laps together. So that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to at least get ranked or get on the board so I could race on Saturday. At that point, the competitive drive was taken over. All that stuff about just coming out for the experience, that kind of just went out the window real quick, because anybody who races, or if you have a competitive nature, that's pretty strong driving. That'll just take over. So once I got on the board, I was happy. And even 12th, I heard her call out 12th overall. That was such a great feeling. I said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Did you say 12th?" And she said, "Yeah, skybound at 12th." And I said, "That's awesome." Ran a couple more packs, but at some point before I left on qualifying, I did end up 5th overall, and just about a 1/10 of a second ahead of Maddie Light, the eventual champion, and then I think only maybe 2.5 or 3 seconds behind the top qualifier. So Friday, by far the funnest day, just walking around, feeling like a rock star. And even though it's just, well, I don't want to say just sport class, because that kind of, I don't want to diminish or take away from anybody else that was there, but even though it's not the pros or the pro class, I was still, it was such a great feeling to just, out of, I don't know, the 75, 6, 7 to 80 people that were there, to sit there in the top 5, or at least in not only at 5th, but in the top 8, to get that first round bye. So I didn't have to go through the next day qualifying and all that stuff. Saturday came around. It was a long day. Started off, and some of you guys may know, started off with the nail in the tire. Had to go get that patched. And so just kind of had to deal with a little bit of stuff to start off Saturday. But we eventually got out there and kind of enjoyed watching the other people go through the, I don't know if you call it elimination brackets, or as they kind of whittled down to the top 16, or the other 16 if you want to call it. But at any rate, to kind of get the final qualifiers to start the final heats. That finished, that wrapped up. We got a couple practice packs in, and practice packs didn't go so well. Certainly could have flown better. Didn't come out with the most confidence after the practice packs, and then that kind of carried over into the final heats. And I think in my first heat I finished 3rd, which meant that dropped me into the losers bracket. I had one more chance. Second heat, the second time I raced, finished 3rd again. So that was it. That was the least amount of times I could have possibly raced at all. Everybody gets at least 2 races, and that's all I got. I dropped out both ones, and then I was over. Ended up 13th overall of the group that was there. And again, certainly would have liked to do better, but I don't want to say that it doesn't matter. It's not important, because that kind of, again, that takes away from, I think, the other people that were there. And it's not for me to really say, oh, it was just 13th, or I didn't do well, or I stink, or whatever, when you might have somebody, maybe they finished in the 20s or 30s or something, and they're feeling really good about their accomplishment. So there's certainly not a takeaway from what anybody did out there. Everybody who was out there should feel proud, and this is a world accomplishment. It's a great thing. But at the time, I was down. As I went through this progression of feeling like I'm not out here to win, or I'm just here for the experience. Once Friday hit and I had qualified 5th overall, it was, oh, okay, I can win. It's like, I could possibly win this thing. But what ultimately, and not to make excuses, of course, there's no excuse. Matty Light, he threw down and he nailed it. Like, it was his. It was all him, all skill. and I don't have anybody but myself to blame as far as a poor performance. But as I left the event, there were kind of like some, I guess there were really, as I boil it down, 6 key takeaways that I had. And so that's what I'd like to share with you guys. So if you, I guess you've made it this far through the story, through the rambling, I guess here we go. The first thing that I would say is streamline your gear. And if you don't want to take this advice for yourself, it's just really a reflection for me, or it's kind of what I plan to do in the future. But streamline your gear. I went with 4 drones. I had 2 floss frames, or 2 floss 3.0 frames. I had a floss 2 frame, and then I had an old Transtech laser frame that came from a quad box a while back. And so they were all working. They're all, they were running, but they, some had a unified a VTX, others had a different kind of VTX, different cameras, all running Crossfire. That was all okay, but had different frames, different video transmitters, different cameras, stuff like that. And I think one of them, the first one that I was kind of qualified with, I ended up breaking the video transmitter on that, and didn't really have, I had a spare transmitter, but it wasn't a Unify, and I didn't have a way to really hook it up in, out in the field or at the table or have time. And not only that, on top of just the gear kind of being somewhat of a mismatch, and they flew, they kind of just, all 4 of them, they flew just a little bit different. They felt just a little bit different. And to get out there and maybe fly 1 quad in 1 heat and then fly another quad in the next heat, when it's, it's time to race and you just have 3 laps, that's not really the time to be, okay, well, let me get back to used to feeling how this drone flies. And, they all had the same rates. The PIDs were the same, all that. Not to say that, I just had these ridiculous rates on all of them, but they just still, whether it's the frame or just the gear itself, they still had a little bit of a different feel to them. So my advice, or my plans in the future, is just to streamline everything. Next race season, I'm going to pick a frame. I'm going to pick flight controller, ESC, VTX, whatever. It's all going to be the same, so that anything that breaks on any quad is going to be the same exact replacement. And and also I'll make sure that they fly the same, that I can go from one to the next, and I'm not going to be able to say, okay, well, this feels a little bit different. So streamline your gear is really my first recommendation. The second is to eliminate distractions. If you haven't had all that much race experience, which like I said, I think this championship was probably my 5th total race ever, I think. And I sim a lot. I sim on Velocidrone a whole lot, and that's really kind of what got me here, I think. But if you don't have a lot of race experience, or as you start to go, there's a lot going on, and especially this past weekend with so many people and the announcers and all that stuff, there's just a lot happening. Matty Light, props to him. He had a game plan for that, and he had his earbuds in, or well, not only earbuds, he had earplugs in. He had headphones over him. When he was ready to race, he just kind of locked down. He put his headphones on, he put his goggles down, and he was just ready to race, eliminate distractions. And definitely not trashing Scully at all. Scully's a great announcer. He's funny, and really we need that, especially for people that came to spectate or travel, or those that are watching the stream. You need something going on. You don't just silence. You're not going to get a lot of people to stay, keep their attention, or keep them focused on the race. So he's a great announcer, and he's funny too, at least in my opinion. But on the flip side, as far as racing, there are a lot of distractions to hear people in line behind you talking. Hear Scully talking. He's calling out the race the whole time. He's given lap positions or track positions of all the racers and kind of what you're doing, and he's maybe cracked a couple jokes, and you hear people talking behind you. There's a lot to get distracted by while you're racing, and I didn't think that it'd be too much of an issue, but in hindsight, as I'm kind of reflecting, I realized that I probably plan to at least use some, if it's not music, at least some earplugs in the future to kind of eliminate that, so I'm focused just on racing and not trying to process everything that's being said while I'm racing as well. 3, have a spotter. And a lot of times when you have a spotter, so somebody kind of just standing there with you to, well, do a couple things. And some things they might do would be to tell you that you missed a gate. So they might be standing right beside you, behind you in the goggles as well, watching your video. And they might, and if, let's say you miss a gate, and they might can tell you or tap you and say, hey, you missed that gate, you need to go back. Or let's say you crash, you know, you're coming around the corner and you hit a gate, you clip something in, and you crash and you kind of get a little bit disoriented. They might can help you get back on track. Say, okay, well, you know, you had just went through this gate, or you had just went through the second gate. And so that might kind of reorient you to get you back on track. For those 2 reasons, let me say that I don't really struggle with that. I mean, I'm pretty good on if I miss a gate. I never really am, you know, I'm pretty good at learning the course. I don't really have concern, or if I miss a gate, I usually catch it and I'll come back, and I never have trouble with that, or at least I haven't so far. And then if I crash, the same thing, I'm usually good. I'm pretty familiar with what gate I went through. I'll come back and I'll go through it. So I did have, shout out to Dreadpool, Wade, who he asked me on, I think, one of my second heats in the championships this past week, and he said, hey, do you want a spotter? And I said, no, I'm good. Because like I said, I thought I was okay with just hitting gates and knowing where I was on the track and all that stuff. But in that second heat, as I was racing, at some point I heard Scully say Skybound in second. And I guess, you know, trying to keep up with what he was saying and racing, I lost the fact, or I lost the realization that I had slipped into third. And so I was racing and I wasn't pushing it. I was just kind of, basically I was just trying not to crash and just keep going, you know, keep a steady pace, because I thought I was in second. But at some point I'd kind of gotten into third, and I didn't really register the announcement, or it didn't hit me. I didn't know. And I came down, I landed, and then I heard Scully announce, you know, so-and-so in first, so-and-so in second, and then Skybound in third. And I said, oh, that's it. You know, I'm done. And I was talking to a couple of guys. I was talking to Quad Doc and Wade, and I was telling them, I said, man, I thought I was in second the whole time. And they said, no, you know, he said, I wanted to tell you to push it, but I didn't want to interrupt you. And so having a spotter in the future for me, and maybe what I recommend for you guys, is to figure out what you need from a spotter and just tell them or ask them to help you with that. And for me, it's going to be, if we're in a heat and maybe you're hitting about that second lap, third lap, and you're in third place and you need to get in the top 2, in the future, I'm going to ask to have somebody to kind of tap me, tell me, say, hey, you know, you're in third, you got to go. You got to push it. And I certainly, you know, that's not to say that I would even have gotten in a second had he told me that. And, you know, maybe I would have pushed it and I would have crashed or something. But at any rate, it doesn't matter if you stay in the air if you're finishing in third, because you can be done anyways. So in the future, I definitely will ask a spotter to keep an eye out for that and tell me if I need to kind of pick up the pace, or if somebody's gaining on me, or if I need to catch up to somebody else. 4, race experience. What I found out real quick, and really, you know, this has been true with all the other races, but especially on the championships or races big scale as this, is that I really got exposed in my race experience and just actually being there. I do a lot of simulator flying, and simulator flying in your room is nice. It's nice and quiet. You can put on whatever music you want to. It's quiet. Well, I said quiet a lot, but yes, it's quiet. There's no stakes. There's no pressure. There's nobody else on the track with you. There's really no risk. You crash and you reset, or you do whatever. And, you know, it's very, what am I saying? Low pressure, low stakes, the sim flying. But it is a whole different beast to get out there and to have, again, just the whole experience, the weather, so many pilots around you, an announcer, hearing the timer, nerves. And so what I would say is get as much race experience as you can. Go to as many races. I know it can be hard a lot of times. Like, you might have the closest chapter that holds regular races could be 2, 3, even 4 hours away. And so I realized that it might not be practical to get to a bunch of races all the time, but that's for me in the future. And just my advice is to get to as many races as possible. So not only have you practiced and become familiar with flying, the actual skill of flying, but you have become familiar with the experience of flying in real life. And, I don't know, it's very easy to just say, oh, well, just fly, it's okay. Just relax, just have fun and just fly. But it's just not, it's not that easy. And you can't, well, let me say you can't. I'm not gonna say you can't. At least I struggled just to kind of will myself to calm down. And that my flying from the championships, from my heats, it was a shadow. I mean, it was just like a shadow of what I was actually capable of. And I didn't fly anywhere near as well as I did the day before qualifying. And I think that was just kind of what really had me so upset. And I'm sure that's what upsets many people. And I know it's certainly not anything that's unique to me. And I know that's just what we all deal with. Anybody who's been out to a race, it's just frustrating to know what you can do and then what you're actually doing out there. And especially to, like I said, to be qualified, 5th overall from Friday, and then to go out and go out back-to-back heats and just be done on Saturday. It was pretty hard pill to swallow. And so the nerves, it was definitely a lot, or it was too much for me to deal with on that day. And so I really want to get just some practice having those nerves, flying with nerves. Maybe that would be the advice, or what I plan to do is try to get as much experience just flying in pressure, or flying with pressure. So then you become familiar with that as well. 5th is send it. I, not only knowing that I didn't fly as well as I could have, or that I know I'm capable of on Saturday or during the championships, but I also never once, not a single lap during championships or during my 2 heats, did I send it. And I was kind of just focused on, I don't want to crash, or I just want to keep a steady pace. And when it's all said and done, I never once actually just pushed and tried to blaze the track, and that, again, that's not to say that if I would have won or anything like that, or that's the reason why I lost. But, shoot, maybe if you get out to a race, let's say if you do make it to the brackets, or, you're on your final leg, just go, just send that thing and just go out knowing like you did what you could, or that you pushed it, and that's kind of one thing as I look back, as I wish I would have just, gave it, like, or, put the throttle up, just sent it on that final heat. But so that's kind of my advice, and that's what I'll be, I guess, looking to do in the future. And then the 6th thing, so this is kind of the final thing, is respond productively. I think it was on the ride back, and trust me, this was a long ride back from Florida to Florence, so about 6 hours of me just racing that track in my head. And I don't know how many laps I put in Daytona, but I put in a whole lot more in my mind on the way back. Just, I couldn't stop thinking about it, just racing the track over. And I heard this was the weekend, I think, LSU, they had beat Alabama, and Saban came on, and I heard him saying something about don't waste a failure. And he said, yeah, we lost or whatever, but let's not waste the failure. Let's learn from it. And that's really hard to do, especially at the time when you have failed. But the 6th kind of piece of advice, or for myself as well, is to respond productively. So not to say that I guess I consider my experience of failure, but a failure in regards to knowing that I didn't race as well as I could have in the final heats. And this is kind of, I guess, my response is to actually think back, dissect what I felt like got in the way of me doing my best, which is kind of the purpose of this video, at least, either advice for someone else or just kind of reflection for me. But respond, like, if you fail when you lose, and everybody loses. I mean, even right now as we speak, it's Saturday, and they're about to have the pro class championships. I mean, there's, I think, 100 people out there almost, and there's going to be 99 people that more or less fail, or at least they lose. There's only going to be one winner, and I don't want to say the others will fail, but so when you don't win, or you don't feel like maybe you did exactly what you wanted to do, have some type of productive response, or make use of it. And so this is kind of what I'm trying to do here, is to make use of this, well, I guess I'll just say failure, because at least in my mind, not racing to my full ability is a failure at this point. But this is the response. This is my reflection. This is me looking back on my experience. I had fun. I had a lot of fun. I wish I would have kind of just got to meet or talk to some more people. But when it's as competitive as I am, I just kind of like to get in my zone, or just think about the track, try to prepare. But there's a lot of cool people out there, people from all over the nation, a couple people from Germany as well, I think. Met Charles Paco from Canada. He was a really cool dude. Lent me some antennas, left-hand antennas, and there's another piece of advice: bring swappable antennas for left hand and right hand. But I don't know. There you go. So that's, for me, that's kind of 6 pieces of advice, or the 6 things I'll kind of be thinking about as I prepare for next racing season. And I don't know, I guess hopefully that kind of helps anybody that's just a new racer, or someone who's thinking about getting into racing. All right. Thank you guys for your time.